Jeff Bezos is about to become the latest billionaire to go to the edge of space, blasting off to more than 62 miles above West Texas in a spacecraft built by his rocket company, Blue Origin. Bezos launches with his brother, an 18-year-old from the Netherlands and an 82-year-old woman, aviation pioneer from Texas.
Now, if this is successful, Blue Origin plans 2 more passenger flights by the end of the year. We're watching this live, so you're going to get our reaction to it. Joining us now is Democratic strategist and owner of JC Strategies, Jennifer Holdsworth-Karp, and senior editor at Reason Magazine, Robbie Suave. Welcome, both of you.
Having us.
Right, now let's just take a look at this live feed so we can react to it. 2, 1, 0. Most expensive cargo in the world is now rocketing up to the edge of space.
Jennifer, what's your reaction as you're seeing this unfold?
Inspiration. Let me be very clear. The United States tax system is almost beyond repair. Democrats are taxing the middle class into oblivion while letting billionaires get away with murder in the tax code, and Republicans are letting everyone get away with murder. So let's just put that out there right now. Having said that, this is inspirational, and the Beltway is seriously missing the boat on what is happening. Now, billionaires are not exactly likable characters, but let's talk about what America and what the world really thinks of Jeff Bezos in particular, because that's what we just watched. According to a YouGov poll, he is the 7th most popular business figure in the world, behind Richard Branson. He is also the 120th most popular public figure in the world. Twitter is not real life. The Beltway is not real life. A lot of Americans and a lot of people across the world are inspired by this, including me. There is obviously a conversation about whether the United States government or the government of the world should be innovating in this way, and we're just not. So private industry is picking up where we're failing. Of course, there's a conversation about we can do more, but it's both. They are not mutually exclusive. We have real problems that need to be fixed by our government, and billionaires going to space is not stopping them from doing that. And I fear that the US government in particular is really missing the boat on something this inspiring. There are things about the future that we should be paying attention to that we're not. A lot of people across the world want to see us advance as a human race into space. It's something that people were, inspired by and united around years ago in this country. Now, I don't want to look at this through rose-colored glasses. There were a lot of people that disagreed with the space program back in the 60s during the space race to the moon. But it was something that we could unite around. It was something that we could be proud of. It's something that we learned from. There was technological and scientific advancements that never would have been had we not gone to space.
But Jennifer,
this is something that is inspiring. And I think that we need to take a step back and stop wishing ill on people who are trying to push us forward. Having said that, obviously there is work to be done for Jeff Bezos to treat his workers right and to pay his taxes. This particular conversation is the wrong context to have it in.
But Jennifer, I'm just curious, and if we went to the moon in 1969 as a government, what exactly does inspire you so much about this billionaire getting to the edge of space? Not saying you're wrong to be inspired. I'm genuinely curious. Like, we did this.
So think about. No, we didn't do this. We did not do commercial space flight. There was nothing in the NASA program for commercial spaceflight. There was nothing in the NASA program to go to borrow a phrase, the next frontier, right? This is something that is pioneering a new thing for the human race, specifically the United States right now. That has not been done before. And we do not know where this undirected research is going to go. I am a huge proponent of undirected research in general. There are a lot of things that result from pushing technology and pushing the bounds of what is possible as a human race. This is the next step. We should be looking into what the next step is.
No,
the U.S.
Robbie,
government isn't doing that.
Robbie, do you agree with Jennifer's point that essentially you have private industry picking up government slack? Or do you think this is something that's actually just going to happen more efficiently with private industry to begin with either way, that this is a positive development? The commercialization of space flight is an important foray for private industry.
It is an important foray. The government has spent, $100 billion on space type stuff, billionaires spending a couple $1 billion of their own money. I don't see why some people on Twitter we're talking about view that as more wasteful than what the U.S. If you think that kind of thing is wasteful, then why isn't your main criticism of the U.S. government, which funds this via tax dollars, rather than people spending their own money and a fraction of it? I think this will, there has to be a phase that all luxuries. There's a phase where this is just enjoyed by the very wealthy, but then competition brings the cost down for everyone else, right? That was true of dental services. That's true of commercial flight, of just airplanes. If you go back, at first it's just the very wealthy who could afford to take that flight, and it's kind of a luxury experience. And then eventually there's more firms offering flights. They compete, they innovate, they find out how to do it more effectively and more efficiently and more cost effectively, and then everyone can do it, or more. There's broader access now. Everyone can fly in a plane, and the part of it that experience that is not pleasant is the one mandated by the government and their ridiculous, totally unnecessary security measures.
Quick follow-up,
I think space will follow that same trajectory.
Is it a sign of decadence that we're celebrating something that the government was able to do, to Ryan's point, like the government did decades ago, that we're sort of, and this is how Rostoth's decadent society opens, is on our lagging in some of these areas where even our fictional imaginations had taken us so much further at this point in the future back then. Is it a sign of decadence that we're really happy to see the privatization of something that the technology has existed for decades?
I don't know that it's decadence. Again, it took a whole lot of money and effort to achieve what we achieved, back in the 60s. Now we're doing it, more cost effectively, and the next step will be competition between firms, and then commercial flights eventually that are broadly available to everyone. So the landmark of touching down on the moon, you're right, that is something we've already done. I guess I actually don't have as much of a wow, space. It doesn't inspire me personally quite as much, but I'm still excited that it's going to generate a lot of ancillary benefits for society in terms of resources, in terms of wealth generation. So it is something to be celebrated. And again, it's Bezos spending his money to do it, not mine. So I'm happier about that.
Well, he was just pushing for a $10 billion bailout, $10 billion
Yeah, and I utterly oppose that.
Money.
That I'm
right.
all against all of that. Never,
right.
never any of that stuff.
We have, tens of millions of people who can't afford prescription drugs, can't afford to go to the doctor. How much confidence, Robbie, do you have that people are going to be able to afford to go into space commercially?
You can see the capsule coming down right there, by the way, and we might as well at this point also know that Bezos, to the question that Ryan just asked, he's claiming that this trip is much deeper than space tourism. As you can see the capsule going down there, let's watch what Bezos had to say about that, and Jennifer, we'll get your reaction.
This is the blue planet, and this is the planet that we have to save. This is the good planet. We will move all heavy industry off Earth. All polluting industry will move off Earth, and Earth will end up zoned residential.
So the company hasn't quite opened ticket sales to the public yet. I don't know what pace that they're going to be on to do that. But Jennifer, what's your reaction to hearing Bezos talk about how this is just much deeper than it's a much deeper issue than just him and just Blue Origin?
I couldn't agree more. I know I'm going to get excoriated by the Twitterati, for agreeing with him on this, but he's right.
Ryan apologizes in advance for sending you those mean tweets.
yours have been relatively mild compared to what I've seen out there. I just think that the human condition was built on pushing technology and exploring and going to the next level. And he's right. Why aren't we looking for alternatives to industry instead of just shutting it down and suffering on this planet? Yes, we should be looking for the next solution. Yeah, the Wright brothers spent the current modern day equivalent of about $30,000 on the aircraft in which they finally flew. At the time, they could have fed thousands of people who were starving when they did that. And maybe they should have. Maybe they also should have done that. There's no question that we need to take care of the problems that we have here on planet Earth. But eventually, our problems are going to be bigger. We have all of these disaster movies that are constantly blockbusters every summer, right? I remember for my pretty much entire 20s and all my 30s, there's always a disaster movie, right? We're always pushing the bounds of what we're doing in space. Eventually, that is going to be a reality. And we are going to need the technology to understand how to prevent or fix what is currently happening about that. And nobody's minding the store because we have other problems. I am okay with private resources or public-private partnerships looking beyond what our immediate 24-hour problem is. There's somebody who needs to be watching that. It is inspirational to me. Of course, any nerd who's watching who went to space camp who wasn't very good at math is going to say, hey, look, it's something that I wish that I could have pursued. I love watching the people at NASA working with these private industries and being inspired by what they're doing. What is this research going to bring technology? What is this research going to bring humanity? Could it possibly solve one of the problems that we have in terms of food insecurity in the country? Can we grow more food where the climate is hospitable in a human-made structure and bring it back to Earth? I think that a lot of people who find it in vogue to just crap all over billionaires because they're doing this are missing the forest for the trees, right? You have to think about the next problem that humanity is going to face while you are confronting the current problems. I'm inspired by it. I think a lot of other people outside of Washington, D.C. and Twitter are inspired by it. And I think we should talk more about how we solve current problems with future technology and this exploration. It would be a much more popular conversation for the powers that be in D.C.
Robbie, I'm curious as a libertarian, when you see something like this, while it is a private individual, it is a massive concentration of unchecked power. Where do you come down on the risk that this unchecked concentrated power poses to us as a free society?
Yeah, and there's also the tricky part for libertarian like me is they're competing for government contracts, right? Mm-hmm. There is as we mentioned previously, there's government money still involved. I was happy to have the Amazon headquarters relocate to Washington D.C. I did not want any sort of tax breaks or subsidies or any of that nonsense. And of course, the city rolled out the red carpet and gave Jeff Bezos everything, all of these ridiculous benefits that he did not need. He certainly was going to move the building there anyway. It's where he lives. That was perfectly obvious. So that kind of stuff is where, is where libertarian, you and I can probably find common agreement, but all I can say is that the government should not do that. I lobby the government to not do that. Vote people in office who won't do that, and that shows how the wealth and the power in the private industries can be wielded against taxpayers when it's being given to them for private ends. So, but the solution, for my mind at least, is not to punish the companies themselves, but to hobble the government to give them more of our money.
So here comes Bezos.
See the thumbs up there.
Yeah, he didn't move for a long time. I was like, they've swarmed the capsule.
He keeps giving the thumbs up. He seems to be pretty pleased with what just transpired.
He's figuring out how to undo a seatbelt, maybe.
We've all been there, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, this entire this entire trip was maybe quicker than people realized that it would be. I mean, this all transpired in a matter of moments with years and years and years and so much money leading up to what we just saw happen. The goal is obviously to have those prices come down to the point where this is something that's accessible. I mean, one way to look at what we just saw is basically as an advertisement, don't you think?
Yes, and one of the innovations in recent private, commercial space travel is the reuse of the various parts. And so you saw the booster, gently and successfully touch back down on the ground. Previously, the technology was not available to salvage those parts, and after the boosters would be used once to launch into space, they would be discarded and they would crash into the ocean. Now they're trying to reuse as many parts as possible to make it more commercially viable. But that also means you're buying a ticket on a rocket that has already gone in and out of space.
Right.
In some ways, like Bezos,
here he comes
with his billions of dollars, being willing to risk all that.
The door is open.
There comes
He
a cowboy.
is wearing a cowboy hat. I suppose it's fitting for how a lot lot of these tech moguls see themselves, right?
Here's the more inspirational guy.
Absolutely.
Or woman, person, 82-year-old.
Oh, we were wrong. That was not Bezos in the cowboy hat. Or was it?
Is it Bezos' brother in the cowboy hat?
Well, while we sort of parse the important details about who is wearing the cowboy hat, we'll continue with Ryan's point, though, here. That is, this really is how a lot of these ultra-powerful tech billionaires see themselves. It's how they've increasingly seen themselves as their power has concentrated and as it's grown. They see themselves as figures in the American imagination in the same way that cowboys are in the American imagination. They're these renegades that are, opening up the frontier, policing the frontier. And that's, in fact, what they're doing. And now they want to do it with space.
Right. That's certainly how they see themselves. And we were talking earlier in the program about the privatization of force through mercenaries, the privatization of cyber warfare through companies like NSO Group. Now you have the privatization of space travel. You have people who have been the winners in our lottery system that over the past 20 years has produced billionaire after billionaire, and are now sending themselves into space.
Well, and they're LARPing as cowboys, and you can see on this footage all of these ultra-wealthy Silicon Valley folks who have descended on the desert in Texas in their probably extremely expensive, in vogue cowboy hats, again, to just sort of convince themselves, and they are convinced, they don't need to be convinced, that what they're doing is moral and noble, and it fits, somehow into the story. Now, there is, I think, some to that. The other passengers on this flight, I think, did do something very impressive, and that's absolutely true. We'll see if this goes towards solving some of the world's problems, as Jennifer Holdsworth-Karp said earlier, but, it's difficult to stomach, I think, watching the red carpet literally be rolled out for Jeff Bezos.
Yep, and we will have more Rising for you right after this.